my name is Liv. I've worked for Partners for Clean Streams for a little more than 2 years now. I started off as the program coordinator for Partners for Clean Streams, so I have a very on-the-ground view of what I do with volunteers and what we do with volunteers, but I now work as the communications and outreach specialist. So I do more work behind the scenes, working on updating websites, running our social media, and doing educational outreach. So I am going to chat with you all tonight a little bit about removing and preventing marine debris with a focus on Northwest Ohio, because PCS is a Northwest Ohio organization. We're based in Perrysburg, but we work all around the area, and we do plenty in the Oak Openings region. We actually had a cleanup earlier this season along the property line of Kitty Todd, and we found some very interesting things. And we are going to talk today about how our roadside ditches are actually pretty important local waterways. So even in places you might not expect to find stream cleanups, we're out there doing the work. So I am going to get us started. If you've got questions, you can type them in the chat or hold them until the end, and then we're going to open the floor for questions once I reach the end of my talk. So we are a nonprofit organization. I would be remiss to begin without talking about our mission. We do work for clean, clear, and safe water, baseline. And we do this in many different ways. So through a combination of partnerships and leadership on planning, public education, volunteer opportunities, and restoration projects, that is many different things already, we strive for abundant open space and a high-quality natural environment, adequate floodwater storage capacities, and flourishing wildlife, stakeholders who take local ownership in their resources, rivers, streams, and lakes that are clean, clear, and safe. So that is the work that grounds everything that we do. You all are supporters and aficionados of wild ones, so you're very familiar with the work grounded in native plantings, and we'll see a lot of overlap, of course, in water quality and native plants. I've implemented a cheesy little feature of our presentation, which is that we are an action-oriented organization, and I've got this little star symbol on take-home things that you can actually do, either programs or immediate actions that you can take to improve water quality in our area. So if you find yourself drifting, you can reorient especially to our starred sections of action, thing to do. So I am both delighted and chagrined to say that all of these images of marine debris are images that we have found. Oh, I've got some more info about the Sawyer hike in the chat. That's fabulous. This first picture of all of the bottles in a waterway is in the Ottawa River. It was on Clean Your Streams Day last year. Yes, this car did come from a Clean Your Streams Day cleanup. We did a partnership with local fire departments when we were aware that there had been some serious dumped material. That's from some years back now. And then our final image here is some fishing line that we pulled out of the Maumee River on one of our many Get the Let Out cleanups. So marine debris covers things both large and small. So we're all here to learn. We begin with some definitions, and I want to break it down a little bit. So I think a lot of us, when we think about marine debris, immediately have an image conjured of a plastic water bottle floating in the ocean. And that certainly does qualify, but that's only a piece of what we're talking about. So the first part of this definition I want to highlight is actually at the end, which is we do call it marine debris. We are in the Great Lakes. Some people are puzzled by this. This is simply the terminology that we use to have our work recognized. It's what we use to apply for grants. If NOAA says that in the Great Lakes it's marine debris, it counts as marine debris. So we're not an ocean environment, but it still is encompassed in that wider sphere, being a Great Lakes watershed. So back to the top, marine debris is defined as any persistent solid material, meaning oil spills are a problem, they're a bad thing, but they're not actually marine debris. That's not what we're focused on. That is manufactured or processed. Log jams are not fun to have in our waterways. They can be frustrating for kayakers. They can be potentially dangerous if you're climbing on them, but they don't count as marine debris. Directly or indirectly, And then our next bit, intentionally or unintentionally. I think a lot of us have the impression that marine debris is exclusively the product of careless people, right? Who thoughtlessly toss trash out of their car window or don't pick up after themselves on Lake Erie's beach. That absolutely happens, but a lot of it does not originate from the water. And we're going to get into why that is and where it actually does come from. So a lot of marine debris is unintentional, we found. So going through our whole definition now, marine debris is defined as any persistent solid material that is manufactured or processed and directly or indirectly, intentionally or unintentionally, disposed of or abandoned into an ocean or Great Lake. So that is what we're digging into today. That's the stuff. Got some more fun examples. Also, these are all from more recent cleanups. So the shopping cart is from Silver Lake in Forest Cemetery. Our lovely glove image highlights some smaller marine debris, maybe a little too big to be called microplastics, but it shows the way that things can break down. That was actually at Cullen Park, which is a beautiful spot for bird watching and boating, but because of its location at the mouth of the Maumee River, it collects a lot of stuff from downriver and it just gets broken and crashed against the rocks and sticks there. So the quality of debris that we find is very different across different places, which we're also going to talk a bit about today. That second picture, this isn't meant to single out Cullen Park in particular, but it does happen to come from a cleanup there. We find a staggering variety of things at our cleanups, and we actually meticulously record data and are citizen scientists when we do cleanups. So we know what we're talking about when we talk trash. So when we think about impacts of marine debris, some are more obvious or intuitive than others. The first one that comes to mind for a lot of us who are fans of plants and animals, it can be very dangerous to wildlife through consumption or entanglement. Plastic pieces are easily mistaken for food, particularly fishing line debris. Things like nets, line are very difficult for entanglement. We have had people call us and tell us that they've seen geese entangled in fishing line. That's not what Partners for Clean Streams does. We call our friends with Nature's Nursery, but that has been definitely known to happen in our area, and we consider our cleanups to be a force for good against that kind of thing happening. Marine debris harms aesthetics by degrading community pride, and it can decrease home values if egregious. It is really unpleasant to have a waterfront property that is constantly assailed by trash, right? It can impair recreation and enjoyment of waterways. We all want to have trash-free waters. We want to be able to walk by the shore or canoe or go hunting for rare plants and not be impacted by trash. And it can certainly leach chemicals that affect humans and wildlife. And then sort of a more hidden cost of it, there's a higher cost to remove it from treatment plants and clogged storm sewers. So our treatment plants are not designed to handle trash, right? And when we reduce the load of trash going into our storm sewers, that has positive impacts for our whole municipality. So I have here kind of a funny example of trash traveling. I went on Zillow and I looked for a house that was on the market. So I did not pick these people to single them out, but this was in the neighborhood where I grew up. It's in St. James Wood in Toledo, Ohio. So when I was a kid growing up here, I did not regard myself as having waterfront property. I thought of Lake Erie as something that was very far away. I occasionally got to go to Maumee Bay State Park, which was very cool. I didn't even really have a sense that Toledo's Maumee River was the same thing that flowed into Maumee Bay. I think I thought the name was a coincidence rather than them having a relationship. So now, after working at Partners for Clean Streams, I've come to understand any house is a kind of waterfront property. If you're in a suburb like the one where I grew up, you have a network of storm sewers that run water off of the roads, and the storm sewers go directly into local creeks and ditches, and I have a sense of the flow into larger water systems. So the behind the scenes picture is that little image on the left-hand side on the bottom that was a street map, now shows a little ditch called Smith Ditch. And I can follow the path of Smith Ditch, which hooks up with Hill Ditch, which hooks up with the Ottawa River, which then connects to Maumee Bay. So one of the things that I always espouse is getting to know your local waterway. Figure out the first place that water touches when it flows from your yard, whether you live in the city, whether you live in the countryside. That can be a really meaningful exercise to get more connected to your water system. So how does trash travel? Through stormwater, much of the time. The better we steward local storm drains, and if you're in the countryside, ditches function much the same way. That is the first line of defense against trash hitting our waterways. Partners for Clean Streams is the facilitating organization for a group called the Maumee Area of Concern Advisory Committee. Some of you may have encountered it before. It is a committee of folks from the public sector world, government agencies, the private sector world. There are representatives from businesses, from academia, and concerned citizens, and they all work toward reducing formally called beneficial use impairments, but more casually called harms to our waterway, specific enumerated harms. And these are what we look at in terms of our overall boundary watersheds. So where I was talking about before, where I grew up, is actually part of the larger Ottawa River frontal Lake Erie system. But I think it could be fun to find where you are on the map if you don't know already. And this is your unit of watershed, one smaller than Lake Erie. We know it all flows to Lake Erie eventually where we live, but I find this to be kind of a cool exercise and not a way that I'm used to visualizing our waterways. I'll add a plug that our website has lots of watershed specific information that if you're curious to know about your local watershed, you can find it. So when we talk about how do we know where trash originates from, a very interesting example is in PPE masks, a kind of case study, because this was the sort of trash that none of us saw on a daily basis prior to 2020. And these days, I think it's safe to say that we see it pretty rarely. There was a period in 2020, 2021 where these were everywhere. We still find them, but there were a bunch of scientific studies done to see how do PPE masks specifically travel? How quickly do they reach waterways? How prevalent do we find them? Because it was like a sudden new injection into the trash system, right? Nobody was casually wearing these before on a day-to-day basis if you weren't in a hospital. So if you're finding a PPE mask in the middle of Lake Erie, it's possible somebody was wearing it on a boat and it blew off, but far more likely that it came from the land. So these are some of the ways that we know that trash can travel. There's trash that simply only happens on land or very predominantly happens on land. And we still find it in the center of Great Lakes, at the bottom of Great Lakes, when people do dives. And it can be a very illuminating case to think about trash in that way. So we've reached our first action star, how to stop traveling trash. This picture devastates me. It makes me very sad, but I think we've all been at an event before where the trash looked like this. In our own homes and properties, keep your trash from blowing by using a trash can with a lid and making sure your bag is tied securely shut. This might sound really minor, but a lot of us don't think about it when, we have one extra thing to top off and toss at the top of a trash can. That is way more likely to be the thing that blows away, the one plastic bag that's not properly bagged up or included. It would be very easy to let it go if your trash can does not have a lid. So a lot of us think of ourselves as like, we certainly would never be the type to litter, to toss something out carelessly, but there's still ways that we can make a positive difference, maybe more than we expect. So being mindful of full bins when out and about, don't place trash into bins that are already overflowing. this is maybe a more egregious example, but I try to be more mindful of this when I'm out and about now. A lot of folks don't know, probably in this audience you all do, but you can spread the word to others, that cigarette butts are absolutely plastic waste. Many people think that they're biodegradable, that they're paper, but they do contain small plastic pieces, so they really should be only disposed of in secure ashtrays. And they make these fantastic little portable butt containers that they're sort of like envelopes, but they're safe if there's a little bit of cinder and ember in there, and you don't have to worry about plastic pieces going into the environment. And then the last piece is what we've already chatted about, getting to know your waterways and having a sense of ownership over where does the water from your property or business or park that you love to frequent flow to. So with my Partners for Clean Streams hat on, we have marine debris removal programs and marine debris prevention programs. So we're going to chat a little bit about both of those today. And there are aspects of these that you can do on your own. And there are aspects that if you'd like to join us on a program, you are super encouraged to. So first up is our program called Clean Your Streams 365. This is about what the name implies. Volunteers choose a time and location to remove marine debris, recording types of items and trash weights as you clean up. We'll chat more about citizen science data collection later. Most of these cleanups are land-based, but we've also facilitated 2 paddle cleanups this year with metro parks. And actually, I should add, we did one with Wood County parks this year as well. So those are particularly fun. We often will go out to islands on the Maumee River. We hit Delaware Horseshoe Island complex recently, and you find some very interesting things that wash up out there or are left there by folks who are partying. So I've highlighted some of the wonderful groups that we've worked with in the past. We have university students. We've got a group of folks from Earnest Brew Works. They're just fans who like to hang out there, just a friend group. And they said, we want to clean up Swan Creek because it's right in our backyard. Could we borrow some supplies and have at it? And they found these incredible rolls of carpet and big drums. It was very satisfying. We have a friend group that have referred to themselves. I didn't name them this. They named themselves the Point Place Garbage Girls. There's some staff members from Target. So there's all sorts of folks who will come out and do these as just a fun activity. So in the future, would love to be able to host a cleanup for wild ones sometime at a good Oak Openings waterway of your choice. So next up is Get the Let Out. Get the Let Out season is currently on. So these photos, that says 2023, but that was actually from last year. So I think that's mislabeled. These marine debris cleanups specifically focus on fishing line, lures, hooks, and lead sinkers found in the Maumee River. The Maumee River has a fabulous, fabulous event called the Walleye Run that brings regional tourism for folks that want to fish our rivers. But the downside to fishing debris is that line simply breaks, things get left behind. Many anglers are the best water stewards that we have. They work really hard to keep everything clean. They come out to our cleanup sometimes, actually, but there are some folks who are a little bit less responsible, and the tangled fishing line and lead sinkers are some of the most harmful types of debris that we find in the waterways. So we started these cleanups 19 years ago in order to fish out that fishing line debris. So we specifically hold these programs when the Maumee River water levels are lower, so we can walk out onto Maumee River islands, get things that are tangled up in the shore. They are a lot of fun. I like the sort of sense of adventure that comes with them, and they have an outsized impact in terms of cleanups because they do focus on that really persistent fishing debris that are in places that people typically don't go to clean up. It's not, you know, a beautiful piece of Metro Park waterfront property that they take really good care of. They're often a bit more rugged of locations. So next up is Clean Your Streams Day. This predates 365. It has been going for 27 years strong and is coming up in September. So if you wanted to put together a Wild Ones team for Clean Your Streams Day, there is a kickoff location in the Oak Openings region, actually hosted by John Zabowski and Rick Bryan. And I feel like I saw John on this call. So Yeah, he is on this call. Thank you, John. So we're really happy to have friends and wild ones who help facilitate these cleanups and this work. So a little more info on this one. We've got kickoff locations intentionally spread around the region. We provide all of the supplies. You can clean on your own, but you can also clean in a group. And we will typically hit 60 different sites in a single day, removing thousands of pounds of marine debris. And afterward, we have a volunteer appreciation picnic, and we give you free food, and there's activity stations, and it's a good time. It's a family-friendly event and great for bringing kids to. So for you all, I would encourage you to go to the Secor Metro Park kickoff. And then from that kickoff, you'll be sent out to a site somewhere in the Oak Openings region, often nearby Salamander Flats, Kitty Todd property, sometimes other places out by Irwin Prairie, lots of good sites out there. So I mentioned before that we record cleanup data as citizen scientists. It's nice that we pick up trash. Everybody's in favor of having less trash, but why bother recording the data? So we want to measure our impact and the difference we make. We want to know how marine debris compares from site to site and year to year. We want to learn how to target removal, prevention, and education strategies, and to share our results with other organizations, government agencies, and companies. Some organizations that compile marine debris results will actually tag corporations. There's an app called Literati that encourages folks to take pictures of the most common type of debris they find, and they'll go at Pepsi. We found a whole bunch of your products here at this cleanup. What are you doing to increase recycling options? So there's some cool things that people do with that. But for our part, we're very focused on measuring our impact and making sure that it's the best that it can be. So how do we actually use this data? Locally, we want to understand area trends. So for example, of a trend, there is demonstrably more single-use plastic in the cleanups that we do than 25 years ago when Clean Your Streams first started. But on the plus side, there is less large-scale illegal dumping. There's a few different theories as to why that might be. The city of Toledo and other municipalities have really stepped up disposal programs for kind of difficult to dispose items like furniture, tires, and paint. Toledo has these Engaged Toledo days that make it easier to drop stuff off. But there's also just been more awareness and sense of responsibility. Folks are less likely to dump their car oil down a local storm drain. For one thing, few of us change our own car oil anymore, but any sort of chemical like that, there's a greater understanding than ever that that is the path to the local waterways. So understanding area trends. Next up on here, I have prevention and education methods can be tailored to what's being found, where we're finding it and how it ends up there. So for example, we would do different kinds of awareness campaigns if we're finding a lot of escaped trash, which frankly, it seems that we are in a lot of places, versus we find a whole bunch of illegal dumping of tires that has to be addressed differently. Regionally and nationally, we want to use identified trends to inform policy and funding decisions, and to work with companies to change packaging and disposal methods. When people started having lots of awareness around the six-pack rings and their impact on animal life, how it was like a real health threat and was causing lots of animal deaths, there was a huge campaign to get those changed. So packaging does improve, even if it's not as quickly as we'd like it to. So the more attention that we raise around that, the more people are incentivized to find solutions to problems. So now is when I do what I promised and we dig into some of the data of what the heck do we actually find on Clean Your Streams and in our different programs. So this is one program snapshot from Clean Your Streams Day last September. So the one coming up this September, I'll be very curious to see if it is similar or different. So we'll get started in this top left section here. We had 652 volunteers, which is less than we've had some years. We've had over 1,000 volunteers, but our programs have been slowly rebounding from a pandemic lull, and this is more than the last 2 years, so we expect it to keep going up. we collected 13,594 pounds of marine debris, which is a pretty staggering number considering these cleanups take place mostly over a 2-hour span. There's a few people who will clean in what we call our remote kickoff, where groups will do clean on your own, but the vast majority of volunteers are cleaning during 1-2-hour span during their volunteer period. We hit 62 sites and covered just under 30 river miles across the sites. So I'll look next at our pie chart over here on the right side. What did they actually remove? Just under half single-use food and beverage packaging, which we include bottles, cans, straws, takeout containers, fast food packaging, plastic silverware, and there's some other sorts of items like a milk jug would be a single-use food and beverage packaging. So this is no surprise with the trends that I've talked about before. Unfortunately, the rise of single-use stuff is only increasing, and a lot of things are lighter than ever and easier airborne than ever. So they do travel on wind and on water. Our next subcategory is tiny trash. So we really do have folks check if they're picking up plastic and foam pieces that are about quarter-sized or smaller. That's what we consider to be tiny trash or microplastics. So we do this by number of items, not by amount of weight. By weight, this would be smaller. But in terms of what we pick up, we do hit a lot of sites where the trash has gone downriver and there's been a chance for things to break up quite a bit. So that's where a lot of this tiny trash is coming from. Down here, we've got our other single use, which includes things like cigarette butts, tobacco packaging, PPE masks that we talked about earlier, other kinds of hygiene items, and balloons. And then 11% is a very miscellaneous. I believe that my next slide is going to show what those are, or some examples of miscellany. But yeah, it says below, but it's on our next slide. So we'll talk about miscellaneous in a moment. Our top 5 items removed are no surprise based on what our pie chart looks like. First up is food wrappers, followed by plastic bottles, plenty of cigarette butts, aluminum cans, and then grocery bags. So miscellaneous always delights me. It's one of the more fun parts of our job as marine debris stewards. This picture was sent to me by one of our volunteers. It was actually sent to me by the volunteer on the left who had worked with us before on cleanups, and he was out at the University of Toledo kickoff. And I was sort of flabbergasted because the guy on the right is my dad, and I had no idea that he was gonna be coming out to this kickoff. He's a professor at the University of Toledo, so it makes total sense that he would go to the UT kickoff. But it just delighted me to receive a picture of my dad and a UT student hoisting a toilet that they found, I believe in Heldman Ditch or a section of the Ottawa River. I can't remember exactly what they were cleaning, but I was completely delighted by it. Some of our other miscellany includes fishing line, construction materials, which is a big category, but includes everything from plastic overwrap that holds things when they're being transported to things like barrels and cones, which we find quite a lot of. Those are more mobile than you might think. They can wander off. Plenty of toys and balls, plenty of clothing, dropping off a little bit when it comes to tires, e-waste. And yes, we did find 27 appliances, and one of those was a toilet found by my dad and some UT students, so delightful. And then, of course, we actually have a competition for the most peculiar items found and photographed. We love our photo contest every year, so if you want to come out to Cleaner Streams Day, definitely submit your strange finds. But some of our favorites, this was, again, just one year. We, across the 27 years that we've done this now, many more things, but crashed drone, toilet, rubber ducky with a unicorn mane that was photographed. It's cute. Fire extinguisher, plastic succulent plants, air mattresses, saws, kitchen play sets, and multiple e-bikes. So some mysteries to be uncovered in the miscellany. So that's marine debris removal. Many people have very rightly pointed out over the years, you know that if you just pick up trash, you're going to be picking up trash forever, right? Yes, we know this, that there's more work to be done on the prevention side. It's worth removing. It does make a difference, both on the citizen science end of figuring out what's out there, but also on the preventing harm to animals and the environment side. But we do want to work on preventing marine debris at the source and doing education efforts. So we're going to chat a bit about what some of those programs look like. First up, we've got storm drain marking. Volunteers will label storm drains with stenciled paint or medallions, just depends on your municipality. Some places prefer one or the other, to help prevent improper dumping and blocking drains. And as another part of that, there are some door tags that volunteers will distribute throughout the neighborhood that explains what storm drains are, what somebody's local waterway might be. They might not be aware that they have one, and helps raise awareness about the program. So in 2022, we provided staff and supplies for 2 Scout Merit Badge workshops and then 3 school-affiliated programs. But we are looking to get more adults involved in this program. It is pretty fun, in my opinion. There's rare chances as an adult that you get to use spray paint in a responsible manner. So I encourage that. We had a group from ProMedica actually do some storm drain medallioning of their property downtown by the Maumee River. They did not pick the spray paint option. The city of Toledo does prefer the medallions. But they had a really great time and really enjoyed learning about the Maumee River and going out and marking the drains on their property. So we do this for corporate groups and civic organizations. But just a few stats on this one. We ended up marking about 524 drains over the last year. We're still working on the tallies for this year, and then hitting 1,308 households with those educational door tags. So we've got a pretty good reach, but we are looking to expand this program. Next up, we've got reel in and recycle. So we talked about get the let out earlier, of picking up the fishing line, but would really like to not have to do that in the first place, right? So some of you may have seen our fishing line bins around Northwest Ohio, but there are these wonderful sort of pipe-like columns. They're at many different sites that are popular with anglers. We've partnered with multiple parks departments on them: Sylvania, Olander, Wood County, Metro Parks, some City of Toledo properties, some other properties. Regional partners will install these bins, and volunteers can adopt a bin by agreeing to clean and maintain it. And this fishing line goes on to be cleaned if it's dirty. Sometimes it's got, pond scum and dirt and things on it, and actually get fully recycled as much as possible. We also clean and recycle the line on the get the let out cleanups. Many folks don't know that fishing line is one of the rare materials that can be transformed completely back into itself. It doesn't have to downgrade to another kind of plastic. It can be recycled right back into fishing line. So if it's treated properly, it can be a pretty good material. So right now we have 36 bins in use, but we're actually working on installing a few more. So by the end of this year, that number, I believe, will be up to 40. If there is a location that you think could benefit from a fishing line recycling bin, you can definitely connect with me or go through our website and let us know. We often have to connect with the property owners. So if you say, this is my favorite waterway site, but I don't actually have a connection to them, it'll take a little bit more work, but we're happy to get this program expanded. We also work with the Glass City Marathon Green Team. We co-lead it with Keep Toledo Lucas County Beautiful, or KTLCB, and we are focused on diverting landfill waste, protecting the Ottawa River, which is where the Glass City Marathon runs through, and helping the marathon make more sustainable purchasing choices. This partnership got started because the Glass City Marathon is one of the biggest events that draws people to Toledo, Ohio. I am not a runner, so I was not aware of just how great the draw was of our city. But it turns out the fact that we're really flat is an incredible asset. People come to Toledo to make their Boston Marathon qualifying times because we're so dang flat. We're a very easy marathon to race. So tens of thousands of people come out to this race weekend, and there is an incredible amount of trash that gets generated at the after party. But a lot of it can become an incredible amount of recycling with different kinds of purchasing choices and stations set up. So this lovely picture that I have of our executive director, Chris, on the left is a bunch of cardboard boxes and cardboard cups that got composted. Last year was the first year that the Glass City Marathon switched from plastic water stop cups to compostable cups, which was an awesome change, and they kept it up this year. So we're really happy about that and hope that continues. That is pounds and pounds of waste that are not going to end up going into a landfill. It says volunteer sign-up shifts are now open. That's not true. That's left over from another presentation. I apologize. But in the future, we'll continue to work on this program. Right now, I'd point you toward Clean Your Streams Day. So I've given you a lot of specific programs. I'm going to end with just a few more ways to get involved and support our work, and then I'll open it up to questions. So the basic URL of where to go is visit partnersforcleanstreams.org/volunteer. You can select a particular program. If going to Maumee River Islands to fish sounds exciting to you, check out Get the Let Out. If you're just interested in, or to remove fishing debris, I should say, we don't do the fishing. You have to do that on your own time. If you're just interested in programs in general, you can let us know that. We do have a monthly newsletter that we do our best to fill with the most interesting facts and figures from our programs and stories about our volunteers that we can find. And we try very hard to be a source of positivity on social media. We are encouraging and active in how we talk about environmental problems. I think that it's easy to get discouraged, but there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful and to be excited about the future of marine debris and trash. So we try to focus on that side of things. There are lots of ways to support us. We have a membership program where you get to vote on issues at the annual general meeting that we host in November. And you have a sense of ownership of protecting streams for the next generation. And there are individual memberships at different levels and organizational memberships at different levels, with more information available on our website. There are one-time donations, such as via our PayPal portal. We have an employee donation program with Northwest Ohio Community Shares. And we also have programs like Kroger Rewards and Amazon Smiles that we're also familiar with. So it's our final point here, some simple steps to reduce marine debris. If there's one thing that I want you to be able to take away from this, even keeping in mind that we're an environmentally conscious audience who's aware of some of these things, we can always encourage it for other folks. My first item is to really use reusables whenever possible. It's so easy to keep the reusable bags in the car and forget about them, or to think of them as only grocery bags when you can bring them to any kind of store, buying clothes, going to the hardware store. Getting comfortable skipping not just straws, but also the plastic cutlery from places that you might not need, little sauce packets that you know you're not going to use. It's just a good habit to build up. Taking your own toiletries to hotels. There's lots of ways to kind of do a self-audit of where you can integrate more reusables into your life, and that can be a really rewarding exercise. Being trash conscious, we talked a lot about escaped trash, so avoiding taking out your trash in windy and stormy weather makes a surprisingly big difference, and a lot of us are not conscious of the weather when we take out our trash, but that really prevents that escaped trash factor. Making sure to bag very securely, and you can always be part of the solution by picking up trash as you go along, which I'm sure many of you already do. And finally, being aware of what you buy, buying in bulk to use less plastic packaging, choosing more plastic-free or plastic light items.